Last Thursday night, I walked into what I thought was a family celebration dinner. Instead, I found myself sitting across from my parents, my brother Marcus, and my sister-in-law Patricia, as they calmly informed me that I was being removed from the family business, stripped of my inheritance, and essentially disowned. The reason they claimed I had been embezzling funds from our luxury hotel chain for years. Complete lies. But what they did not know was that I had been recording every conversation for months, waiting for this exact moment. Hey, everyone, watching from around the world. If this family betrayal story hits close to home, please hit that like button and subscribe because this revenge journey is just getting started. You will not believe what happens when family blood turns to poison and how sometimes the people closest to you become your greatest enemies. Let me tell you how my own family tried to destroy me but ended up destroying themselves instead. My name is Vivian Ashworth, and I am 32 years old. For the past 8 years, I had been the chief financial officer of Ashworth Hospitality Group, our family empire that owned 15 luxury hotels across the East Coast. My grandfather built this business from nothing. My father expanded it, and I had dedicated my entire adult life to making it even more successful. The dinner was supposed to celebrate our latest acquisition in Charleston. Instead, my father Richard cleared his throat and announced that the family had made a decision about my future with the company. My mother Eleanor sat silently, avoiding eye contact. Marcus leaned back in his chair with a smirk that made my stomach turn. Patricia, who had only married into this family 3 years ago, looked almost pleased. "Vivian, we have discovered some financial irregularities in the books." My father began, his voice cold and formal. "Money has been systematically moved from company accounts into personal investments under your authorization. We have documentation showing transfers totaling over $2 million. I felt the blood drain from my face. "That is impossible. I would never." "The evidence is clear," Marcus interrupted, sliding a folder across the table. "Bank statements, authorization codes, everything traces back to you. You have been stealing from your own family." I opened the folder with shaking hands. The documents looked legitimate at first glance, but something felt wrong. The signatures looked like mine, but the handwriting was slightly off. The authorization codes were correct, but the timing felt suspicious. These transfers had allegedly occurred during a period when I had been dealing with my grandmother's funeral arrangements and had delegated many financial tasks to Marcus. "I need time to review these documents properly," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This makes no sense. Why would I steal from my own future inheritance?" "Because you have always been entitled and reckless." Patricia spoke up for the first time. "You never appreciated what this family built. You thought you deserved more than your fair share." The accusation stung because it was so far from the truth. I had worked 60-hour weeks for years, often sacrificing personal relationships and my social life for the company. I had turned down job offers from competing firms because I believed in our family legacy. I had poured my heart and soul into making our hotels the best in the region. "We are removing you from all positions effective immediately," my father continued. "Your access to company accounts, buildings, and systems will be terminated tonight. We are also removing you from any inheritance considerations until this matter is resolved through legal channels." "You cannot be serious," I whispered. "You are destroying my life based on documents I have never seen before." "The decision is final." My mother finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "We cannot have someone we cannot trust in a position of financial responsibility." Marcus leaned forward, and for a moment, I saw something in his eyes that made everything click into place. This was not about missing money. This was about power. Marcus had always resented that our father had chosen me as the CFO instead of him. He had business degree from an expensive school, but he lacked the attention to detail and strategic thinking that the position required. Our father had made the right choice from a business perspective, but it had created years of resentment. "I want to see the original bank records," I said firmly. "Not copies, not printouts. The original documents from the bank itself." "You are in no position to make demands," Patricia snapped. "You should be grateful we are handling this privately instead of calling the police immediately." That comment confirmed my growing suspicion that this was all a setup. If they truly believed I had stolen millions of dollars, they would have involved law enforcement immediately. Instead, they were trying to handle it quietly within the family, which suggested they knew their evidence would not hold up under real scrutiny. I spent the rest of that dinner in a state of shock, barely speaking, while they discussed the logistics of my removal from the company. They had already changed locks, passwords, and access codes. They had spoken with our attorney about updating corporate documents. They had prepared a press release explaining my sudden departure for personal reasons. This had been planned for weeks, possibly months. As I drove home that night, I realized that my entire life had been destroyed in the span of 2 hours. My career, my financial security, my family relationships, and my reputation were all gone. But more than that, I felt the devastating betrayal of people I had loved and trusted unconditionally. The next morning, I called my personal attorney, Sarah Martinez, who had handled some contract negotiations for me in the past. She agreed to meet me immediately, and when I explained the situation, her expression grew increasingly concerned. "Vivian, this sounds like a coordinated effort to force you out," she said after reviewing the documents. "The timing is suspicious, the evidence is convenient, and the family response seems disproportionate. If they really believed you were guilty of embezzlement, they would have involved law enforcement and conducted a proper investigation." "So, what do I do?" I asked, feeling more lost than I ever had in my life. "We start by requesting a formal audit from an independent accounting firm," Sarah replied. "We also request all original bank documents and transaction records, and we begin documenting every interaction you have with your family from this point forward." That was when I made the decision that would change everything. I was going to fight back, and I was going to expose whatever scheme my brother and sister-in-law had orchestrated to destroy me. Sarah connected me with Rebecca Torres, a forensic accountant who specialized in corporate fraud cases. Rebecca had worked for the FBI for 12 years before starting her own consulting firm, and she had a reputation for uncovering financial crimes that others missed. "I want to understand something first," Rebecca said during our initial meeting. "You had full access to company accounts and financial systems for 8 years. If you wanted to steal money, you could have done it in ways that would have been much harder to detect. Why would you leave such an obvious paper trail?" "Exactly what I have been thinking," I replied. "The whole thing feels deliberately clumsy, like someone wanted the theft to be discovered." Rebecca spent the next 3 weeks conducting a thorough analysis of our company's financial records. She requested documents going back 5 years and worked with Sarah to compel the bank to provide original transaction records. What she discovered was even worse than I had imagined. "Vivian, you were not the person who stole this money," Rebecca announced during our follow-up meeting. "But money was definitely stolen, and it was stolen by someone with intimate knowledge of your authorization codes, your schedule, and your personal banking information." She spread out a series of documents across her conference table. "Look at these transaction dates. Every single transfer occurred during periods when you were out of the office for family emergencies, medical appointments, or vacation days. Someone was monitoring your schedule and timing these transfers for when you would not be likely to notice them immediately." "How is that possible?" I asked, studying the timeline she had created. "Someone had access to your computer, your passwords, and your personal information," Rebecca continued. "But more importantly, they had access to backup authorization codes that should have only been known by senior family members." My stomach dropped as the implications became clear. "You are saying this was an inside job?" "I am saying this was orchestrated by someone within your family who had been planning this for a very long time," Rebecca confirmed. "And I can prove it." She pulled out another set of documents. The stolen money did not disappear into random accounts. It was moved through a series of shell companies and eventually used to purchase real estate, luxury vehicles, and investment portfolios. The paper trail leads to accounts controlled by Marcus Ashworth and Patricia Ashworth. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. My own brother had stolen from the family business and framed me for his crimes. The betrayal was so complete and calculated that I struggled to process it emotionally. "There is more," Rebecca continued grimly. "Based on the timing and complexity of this scheme, I believe they have been planning to remove you from the company for at least 2 years. The theft was just the excuse they needed to justify it." Sarah leaned forward. "This gives us everything we need for both criminal and civil cases. Marcus and Patricia committed fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. They also defamed your character and caused you significant financial harm." But why would they do this? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Power and money, Rebecca replied bluntly. With you out of the picture, Marcus becomes the heir apparent to the family business. Patricia gets the lifestyle she married into, and they eliminate the one person who was competent enough to potentially expose their other financial irregularities. That last comment caught my attention. Other irregularities. Rebecca nodded grimly. I found evidence of additional questionable transactions that predate the money they stole and blamed on you. Marcus has been skimming from vendor payments and inflating expense reports for years. Patricia has been using company credit cards for personal purchases and disguising them as business expenses. Together, they have probably stolen close to $5 million from your family business over the past 3 years. I sat in stunned silence as the full scope of their betrayal became clear. They had not just framed me for theft, they had been systematically looting the company that my grandfather built and my father had spent his life expanding. What do we do now? I asked. Now we build an airtight case, Sarah replied. We document everything we gather additional evidence, and we prepare for war. Because when we expose this, your brother and sister-in-law are going to face serious legal consequences. And what about my parents? I asked quietly. Do they know what Marcus and Patricia have been doing? Rebecca and Sarah exchanged glances. That is something we need to investigate, Sarah said carefully. It is possible they are victims too, but it is also possible they were willing participants in removing you from the company even if they did not know about the theft. Over the next 2 weeks, Rebecca continued her investigation while Sarah prepared our legal strategy. We discovered that Marcus and Patricia had purchased a vacation home in the Hamptons, 2 luxury cars, and had made several large investments in cryptocurrency, all funded by money stolen from Ashworth Hospitality Group. We also learned that they had been meeting regularly with a competitor who had been trying to acquire our company for years. Based on email records that Rebecca was able to obtain through legal channels, it appeared that Marcus had been sharing confidential financial information and strategic plans with this competitor in exchange for a promised position in their organization. The betrayal was not just personal, it was corporate espionage. Marcus was not just stealing money, he was selling out the family legacy to our biggest competitor. As we prepared to present our evidence, I realized that this was about much more than clearing my name or recovering stolen money. This was about saving a business that had been built over 3 generations and protecting employees who depended on our hotels for their livelihoods. But first, I needed to confront my parents with the truth and find out where their loyalties really lay. Before confronting my parents, Sarah suggested we gather additional allies who could corroborate our findings and provide support when we revealed the truth. The first person I reached out to was David Kim, our longtime head of operations, who had worked with our family for 15 years. David had always been like an uncle to me, and I trusted his judgment completely. When I called him and asked to meet privately, he immediately agreed. We met at a coffee shop near his home, away from any locations where Marcus or Patricia might see us. David, I need to tell you something that is going to be difficult to believe. I began and then explained everything we had discovered about the embezzlement scheme and the frame job. David listened intently occasionally, asking clarifying questions, but mostly just absorbing the information with a grave expression. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment before speaking. Vivian, I have to tell you something, he said slowly. I have been worried about irregularities in our financial reporting for months, but I could never put my finger on what was wrong. There were vendor payments that did not match my records expense reports that seemed inflated, and budget allocations that did not make operational sense. Why did you not say anything? I asked. Because the discrepancies always seemed to trace back to authorizations from your department, David replied. I thought maybe you were implementing new financial strategies that I was not aware of. I brought it up with your father once, and he told me that you were handling some special projects and that I should not worry about it. This revelation was both encouraging and devastating. It confirmed that my father had been aware of financial irregularities, but it also meant he had been actively covering for Marcus instead of investigating the problems. David, I need your help, I said. When this comes out, the company is going to face serious scrutiny. We need someone in leadership who can maintain operational stability and protect our employees. You have my complete support, David replied without hesitation. This company meant everything to your grandfather, and I will not let Marcus and Patricia destroy what he built. My next ally came from an unexpected source. Jennifer Walsh, our Director of Human Resources, reached out to me 3 days after my meeting with David. She asked if we could meet privately, saying she had information that might be relevant to my situation. We met at her apartment, and Jennifer immediately apologized for not contacting me sooner. Vivian, I have been struggling with whether to come forward about this, but I cannot stay silent anymore. What is it? I asked. 6 months ago, Patricia asked me to prepare termination paperwork for you, Jennifer explained. She said it was just a precautionary measure in case your performance declined, but she wanted to have everything ready. She specifically asked about the legal requirements for removing a family member from executive positions and inheritance considerations. My blood ran cold. 6 months ago, that was long before they claimed to discover any financial irregularities. Exactly, Jennifer continued. And then, 2 months ago, Marcus asked me to document any complaints about your work performance, even minor ones. He said he was concerned about your stress levels and wanted to help address any issues. But looking back, it feels like he was building a case against you. Jennifer also revealed that Patricia had been asking detailed questions about our employee health insurance policies, specifically about mental health benefits and stress-related medical leave. It seemed like they had been preparing multiple strategies for removing me from the company, with the embezzlement frame job being just one option. There is something else, Jennifer said hesitantly. I overheard a phone conversation between Patricia and someone she called Marcus's business school friend. They were discussing timeline for a major announcement and something about making sure all the pieces were in place before the end of the quarter. This suggested that Marcus and Patricia had outside collaborators and that their scheme was tied to specific business deadlines. Rebecca later confirmed that our company's competitor had been planning a major acquisition announcement for the end of the current quarter, which aligned perfectly with the timing of my removal. With David and Jennifer as allies, we began preparing for the confrontation with my parents. Sarah developed a comprehensive presentation that outlined all of our evidence, including financial records, timeline analysis, and witness statements. Rebecca prepared expert testimony that would be admissible in court if legal proceedings became necessary. But we also faced a significant challenge. Marcus and Patricia were not sitting idly by during our investigation. Through Jennifer, we learned that they had been working to consolidate their control over the company and were preparing to make major strategic changes that would benefit their outside collaborators. David discovered that Marcus had scheduled meetings with our key vendors to renegotiate contracts under terms that were significantly less favorable to our company. Patricia had been working with our marketing team to rebrand our hotel chain in ways that would make it more attractive to potential buyers. Most concerning, they had begun laying the groundwork to terminate several long-term employees who they viewed as loyal to me or potentially problematic for their future plans. This included David Jennifer and Maria Santos, our head of guest services, who had been with the company for 20 years. They are trying to purge anyone who might question their authority or loyalty, Sarah observed during one of our strategy sessions. This is not just about removing you. This is about completely transforming the company into something they can control or sell. The urgency of the situation became clear when David informed us that Marcus had scheduled a board meeting for the following week to formally approve several major strategic changes, including the termination of key employees and the acceptance of a consulting contract with our competitor. We cannot wait any longer, I told Sarah and Rebecca. If we do not act now, they are going to destroy everything my grandfather built before we can stop them. Sarah agreed. We need to confront your parents immediately and present our evidence before Marcus can consolidate his power any further. But as we prepared for what would essentially be a family intervention backed by legal evidence, I received a phone call that changed our entire strategy. Vivian, this is Thomas Ashworth, the voice said. Your grandfather's brother. I think we need to talk. Uncle Thomas had been estranged from our family for years following a business disagreement with my father. I had not spoken with him since I was a teenager. His sudden contact felt like either a miraculous coincidence or a dangerous complication. I have been monitoring the situation with your family's company, Thomas continued. I have information that you need to know before you proceed with whatever you are planning. Can you meet me tomorrow? Against Sarah's initial advice, I agreed to meet with Uncle Thomas. What he revealed would completely change our understanding of Marcus and Patricia's motivations and provide us with the final piece of evidence we needed to expose their conspiracy. The meeting with Uncle Thomas took place at his law office in downtown Boston. He was older than I remembered, but his eyes still held the sharp intelligence that had made him successful in his own business ventures. What he told me shattered my remaining faith in family loyalty. "Vivian, your brother contacted me 6 months ago," Thomas began without preamble. "He told me that you had been embezzling money from the company and that he needed my help to remove you quietly to avoid a family scandal." I felt my heart sink. "And you believed him?" "Initially, yes," Thomas admitted. "Marcus showed me financial documents that seemed convincing, and he painted a picture of you as someone who had become entitled and reckless with company resources. He asked me to use my legal connections to help build a case for your removal." "So you have been working against me this entire time?" I asked, feeling another wave of betrayal wash over me. "That was the plan," Thomas said carefully. But something about Marcus's story never felt right to me. He was too eager, too prepared with answers to questions I had not asked yet. So I started conducting my own investigation. Thomas pulled out a thick folder from his desk. "What I discovered is that Marcus approached me as part of a larger strategy to neutralize potential allies you might turn to. He specifically mentioned that you might try to contact me, David Kim, or other longtime company associates. He was planning for this confrontation months in advance," I realized. "More than that," Thomas continued. "Marcus has been building relationships with board members, key employees, and even family friends, positioning himself as the responsible family member who was trying to protect the business from your alleged misconduct." Thomas showed me copies of emails and text messages between Marcus and various people in our professional and personal networks. The messages painted me as unstable, unreliable, and potentially dangerous to the company's future. Marcus had been systematically destroying my reputation while building support for his eventual takeover. "But here is what Marcus did not know," Thomas said with a slight smile. "I have been documenting every conversation we have had, every piece of evidence he has shown me, and every request he has made. I wanted to protect myself legally in case his allegations against you were true. And now you know they are not. Now I know that your brother is a skilled manipulator who has been planning this coup for much longer than any of us realized," Thomas replied. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. Having Uncle Thomas as an ally would be invaluable given his legal expertise and his knowledge of Marcus's strategy. But that hope was short-lived. 2 days later, I received a devastating phone call from Sarah. "Vivian, we have a problem. David Kim just contacted Marcus and told him about our investigation." I felt the world tilt beneath me. "That is impossible." "David was completely supportive. He gave us information about the financial irregularities." "Marcus called your father this morning and told him that you were conducting a vindictive investigation using company resources and outside consultants," Sarah explained. "David confirmed that he had been meeting with you and providing you with internal company information." "Why would David do that?" I asked, though even as I said it, pieces began falling into place. "I think David was a plant from the beginning," Sarah said grimly. "Think about it. He came forward with concerns about financial irregularities, but only after you had already been accused. He provided information that supported your innocence, but he also learned everything about our investigation strategy and timeline." The betrayal hit me harder than my family's original accusations. David had been like family to me, and I had trusted him completely. The realization that he had been working with Marcus all along made me question my judgment about everyone else in my life. Within hours, the consequences of David's betrayal became clear. My father called and informed me that the family was considering filing a restraining order to prevent me from contacting current employees or accessing any company information. Marcus had convinced them that my investigation was actually an attempt to intimidate witnesses and destroy evidence of my alleged crimes. Even worse, David had apparently told Marcus about Uncle Thomas's involvement, which meant they now knew about our most valuable ally. Thomas called me that evening to inform me that Marcus had already reached out to him, claiming that I was trying to manipulate him with false evidence. "The good news is that I recorded that conversation too," Thomas said. Marcus essentially admitted to lying about several key facts when he tried to explain away the evidence we have gathered. But the bad news is that they know we are coming, and they are prepared for us. Jennifer Walsh also became a liability when she informed me that Patricia had confronted her about our meetings. Jennifer had tried to remain loyal, but under pressure from Patricia and threats about her job security, she admitted to providing me with information about the termination paperwork and other company matters. "I am so sorry, Vivian," Jennifer said through tears during our phone conversation. "Patricia said that if I did not cooperate with their investigation into your vindictive behavior, they would have to terminate me for violating confidentiality policies." I realized that Marcus and Patricia had successfully isolated me from most of my potential allies and had turned the narrative around to make me appear to be the aggressor. They had anticipated that I would fight back, and they had prepared countermeasures for nearly every move we had made. That night, I sat in my apartment feeling more defeated than I had since this entire nightmare began. Rebecca Torres was still working on the financial evidence, but without access to company records and with key witnesses now compromised, our legal case was becoming much more difficult to prove. Sarah tried to remain optimistic, but I could tell she was concerned about our prospects. "We still have the forensic evidence," she reminded me. "Marcus and Patricia cannot explain away the money trail or the timing of the transactions." But I knew that was not enough. In a family business dispute, perception often mattered more than facts. Marcus had successfully positioned himself as the responsible family member trying to protect the company from a disgraced sister, and I was beginning to look like someone who was desperately trying to shift blame for her own crimes. As I prepared for what felt like an inevitable defeat, I had no idea that help was coming from a source none of us had anticipated. The call came at 6 in the morning from a number I did not recognize. The voice on the other end was professional but urgent. "Miss Ashworth, this is Agent Claire Rodriguez with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We need to meet with you today regarding a financial investigation involving Ashworth Hospitality Group." My first thought was that Marcus had somehow convinced federal authorities to investigate me for embezzlement, but Agent Rodriguez quickly clarified that I was not a target of their investigation. "We have been monitoring suspicious financial activity involving your family's business for the past 8 months, she explained during our meeting at a federal building in Boston. "Your brother and sister-in-law are subjects in a broader investigation into money laundering and corporate fraud schemes." Agent Rodriguez was a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She had been investigating financial crimes for 12 years and had developed expertise in cases involving family businesses and corporate conspiracies. "How long have you been watching them?" I asked. "The investigation began when our financial crimes unit noticed unusual patterns in bank transfers involving shell companies connected to Ashworth Hospitality Group," Rodriguez explained. "The transfers were too large and too frequent to be legitimate business expenses, and they were being routed through accounts that appeared to be designed to obscure the money trail." She showed me a complex chart that mapped out financial connections between Marcus and Patricia's personal accounts, several shell companies, and ultimately accounts controlled by Harrison Industries, our primary competitor. "Your brother and sister-in-law have been selling confidential business information to Harrison Industries for at least 2 years, Rodriguez continued. "The money they stole from your family business was just the beginning. They have been providing Harrison with strategic plans, financial data, customer lists, and operational details that have allowed Harrison to undercut your bids and steal your clients." This was corporate espionage on a massive scale. Marcus and Patricia had not just been stealing money, they had been systematically destroying our competitive advantages and handing them to our biggest rival. "But there is more," Rodriguez said, pulling out another set of documents. "We believe Marcus and Patricia were preparing to facilitate a hostile takeover of your family business by Harrison Industries. The plan was to weaken Ashworth Hospitality through strategic missteps and financial losses, then present a buyout offer as the only viable solution to save the company. And removing me from the company was part of that plan." "Removing you was essential," Rodriguez confirmed. "Our analysis suggests that you were the only person in your family with the financial expertise to detect and prevent their scheme. As long as you remained as CFO, their plan could not succeed." Agent Rodriguez then revealed the most shocking aspect of their investigation. The FBI had been monitoring Marcus and Patricia's communications for months, which meant they had recordings of conversations where the couple explicitly discussed framing me for embezzlement. We have recordings of them practicing their story, discussing how to forge authorization codes, and planning the timing of their accusations, Rodriguez explained. We also have evidence that they recruited David Kim as an accomplice by offering him a position with Harrison Industries after the takeover was complete. David's betrayal suddenly made perfect sense. He had not been loyal to Marcus out of friendship. He had been promised a significant financial reward for his cooperation, but the evidence that truly vindicated me came from an unexpected source. Marcus had been so confident in his scheme that he had documented many of his activities in encrypted files on his personal computer. When the FBI obtained a search warrant for his electronic devices, they discovered detailed plans for my removal financial projections for the Harrison Industries takeover and even a timeline for selling off individual hotels after the acquisition. "Your brother kept meticulous records of his crimes," Rodriguez said with something approaching admiration. "It is almost like he wanted to be caught." Rebecca Torres, my forensic accountant, had been contacted by the FBI as part of their investigation. Her analysis had actually helped them identify additional evidence of Marcus and Patricia's crimes. "The FBI investigation confirms everything we discovered and more," Rebecca told me during a follow-up meeting. "But having federal law enforcement involved changes everything. This is no longer just a family dispute. This is a federal criminal case." Agent Rodriguez explained that the FBI was prepared to arrest Marcus and Patricia within the week, but they wanted to coordinate with our family to minimize the impact on the business and its employees. They also wanted my cooperation in documenting the full extent of the damage to our company. Uncle Thomas, who had been brought into the FBI investigation as a cooperating witness, helped coordinate a meeting with my parents. It was time for them to learn the truth about their son and daughter-in-law. The meeting took place in Thomas's law office with Agent Rodriguez and Rebecca Torres present to provide evidence and answer questions. When my parents walked in and saw the federal agent, I watched my father's face go pale. "Richard and Eleanor, what I am about to tell you is going to be difficult to hear," Agent Rodriguez began. "Your son Marcus and his wife Patricia are subjects in a federal investigation for conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement, and corporate espionage." My mother actually gasped when Agent Rodriguez explained the scope of Marcus and Patricia's crimes. My father sat in stunned silence as the evidence was presented, including recordings of Marcus and Patricia discussing how to frame me and planning to sell the family business to our competitors. "This cannot be true," my father finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus would never betray the family like this." "Mr. Ashworth, I am going to play you a recording of your son discussing his plans for your daughter," Agent Rodriguez said gently. She played a brief excerpt where Marcus and Patricia laughed about how easy it had been to manipulate the family and how much money they would make from the Harrison Industries deal. My mother began crying when she heard Marcus refer to me as the obstacle that needed to be eliminated, and Patricia suggest that they could probably have me committed to a mental health facility if the embezzlement charges did not stick. "We are sorry, Vivian," my father said, looking directly at me for the first time in months. "We should have investigated these accusations more thoroughly before acting on them. We should have trusted you." But apologies would have to wait. Agent Rodriguez explained that Marcus and Patricia would be arrested the next morning, and we needed to prepare for the impact their crimes would have on the family business. The arrests happened at 7 in the morning on a Tuesday. Agent Rodriguez called me to confirm that Marcus had been taken into custody at his home, while Patricia was arrested at the company offices, where she had been conducting an early meeting with potential buyers from Harrison Industries. The FBI raids on their properties uncovered additional evidence, including luxury items purchased with stolen money, detailed plans for the corporate takeover, and correspondence with Harrison Industries executives planning the systematic dismantling of our family business. Within hours, the story broke in the local business press. "Ashworth Hospitality Executives Arrested in Corporate Espionage Scheme" was the headline in the Boston Business Journal. The article detailed the charges against Marcus and Patricia and explained how they had attempted to frame me for their own crimes. My phone began ringing constantly with calls from business partners, employees, and industry colleagues who wanted to understand what had happened and express their support. Many of them revealed that they had suspected something was wrong when Marcus had begun making strategic decisions that seemed contrary to our company's established values and practices. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Faced with overwhelming evidence including the FBI recordings and financial documents, Marcus and Patricia both agreed to plea deals to avoid lengthy federal trials. Marcus was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution of $12 million. Patricia received 6 years and was also required to forfeit all assets purchased with stolen money. David Kim was charged as an accomplice and received 3 years probation in exchange for his cooperation with the investigation. Jennifer Walsh was not charged as the FBI determined that she had been coerced into providing information and had not knowingly participated in the conspiracy. But the legal resolution was only the beginning of rebuilding our family and our business. The company had suffered significant damage during the months of Marcus and Patricia's sabotage, and we needed to work quickly to restore relationships with clients and vendors. I was officially reinstated as CFO, but more importantly, my father asked me to take on expanded responsibilities as his likely successor in running the company. The betrayal had aged him considerably, and he recognized that he needed to begin transitioning leadership to someone he could truly trust. My mother struggled the most with the aftermath. She had always favored Marcus and had difficulty accepting that her son had committed such serious crimes against the family. She eventually sought counseling to help process the betrayal and guilt she felt about not protecting me from false accusations. Uncle Thomas became a valuable advisor and helped us implement new financial controls and oversight procedures to prevent future fraud. His legal expertise was invaluable in dealing with the complex aftermath of the federal investigation. Most surprisingly, several employees who had been targeted for termination by Marcus and Patricia stepped forward to provide additional support during our recovery. Maria Santos, our head of guest services, had actually been documenting suspicious activities she had noticed, but had been afraid to report them due to Patricia's intimidating management style. The FBI investigation also exposed the full extent of Harrison Industries' attempted corporate espionage. Federal charges were filed against 3 Harrison executives, and that company faced its own scandal and financial penalties. Ironically, their attempt to acquire our business through fraud ultimately damaged them more than it hurt us. 18 months later, Ashworth Hospitality Group was stronger than it had been before the crisis. We had implemented new safeguards, strengthened our employee relationships, and actually expanded our market share as competitors like Harrison dealt with their own legal problems. I also discovered something unexpected about family loyalty. While my biological family had failed me in the most fundamental ways, I found a chosen family among colleagues, friends, and supporters who had stood by me during the crisis. Rebecca Torres became not just my accountant, but a close friend. Agent Rodriguez and I maintained contact, and she became a mentor who helped me understand how to protect businesses from internal threats. The experience taught me that trust must be earned and verified even within families. It also showed me the importance of building relationships based on mutual respect and shared values rather than just blood connections or traditional obligations. Looking back, I realized that Marcus and Patricia's betrayal, while devastating at the time, ultimately saved our family business from much greater damage. If their scheme had succeeded, hundreds of employees would have lost their jobs, and 3 generations of family legacy would have been destroyed for their personal profit. The most important lesson I learned was that justice does not always come quickly or easily, but it does come for those who persist and fight for the truth. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who pose the greatest threats, and sometimes strangers become our most valuable allies. Today, I run Ashworth Hospitality Group with a focus on transparency, accountability, and genuine family values. We have created a culture where employees feel safe reporting concerns and where financial oversight prevents anyone from having too much unchecked power. My relationship with my parents has been rebuilt on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. We have all learned from the experience, and while the scars remain, we have emerged as a stronger and more authentic family unit. If you have experienced betrayal by family members or people you trusted completely, I want you to know that recovery is possible. Justice can be achieved, and sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the most meaningful growth. Have you ever had to fight back against family members who tried to destroy your life? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself when everyone seemed to be against you? Please share your stories in the comments below and let me know if this journey resonated with your own experiences. Thank you for following this incredible journey with me, and I hope that sharing my story helps others who might be facing similar betrayals. Remember that the truth always finds a way to surface, and sometimes the family that matters most is the one you choose for yourself. Please like this video if it helped you understand that fighting for justice is worth it. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming family drama and share this with anyone who needs to know that they can survive even the worst betrayals and come out stronger on the other side.